Hi there, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is hopefully a Reg Watch where there's actually audio. So we do no longer have Dr. Siegel with us. Right after that stream crashed and burned, we did a half an hour to tape interview, which is the standard thing that we always do here at Reg Watch. But no bells and whistles, quick edit, threw it all together. It's in rendering. And it is, well, I can tell you, it is right now. Let's see here. I'm going to actually press buttons and let's see if it's going to actually kill things here. So for those of you who are tuned in, this is obviously a partial test. Shouldn't be. We've been doing live streams now a little bit for a while without any problems. So it was quite the unusual thing to have happen. I'm just going to do the same thing I did before. I brought down the BG audio level. Okay. And then I should just be able to clear that. All right. And okay, so that all seems to be fine. So you can see here, this is on my other box. This is on our Master Edit Suite box. And I've got Media Encoder chugging away. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a, well, there's Photoshop, you go away. So I'll give you a little behind the scenes look just at the wonderful little gear. No big deal, but it is what we use. So this is Adobe Media Encoder, and right now, oh my goodness, we still got 2.5 hours left on this render. It's because I did some color correction and stuff like that, which obviously I shouldn't have done, but there you go. It's good. It's about 25 minutes, and we jumped right into it. We went straight into the good stuff. So it's safe to say Dr. Siegel thinks that the CDC's conduct in this matter is, I will use the word incorrigible. He didn't, but you will get that same gist. There's no doubt. And so, okay, I'm just checking my audio. Okay, well, I have no idea what in the hell. Now, the only thing that's different from what's going on here is that I do not have a feed coming in from our live box behind me, and that feed comes in over NDI, which is network computer stuff, and then it feeds into here. So maybe that's what was causing the bugs with Wirecast, because otherwise, everything else, I'm going to say that and watch it all fall apart. Name key, that's fine. Seems to be working. And then if I have to go away for a minute. I just love that. Maybe I shouldn't have picked such dramatic music. It really builds the tension, and then it all falls apart when the live stream happens. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Let me just check over here and see. Okay, so. Shay. Excellent. Look forward to it. Oh, Wirecast, and use that for years. Yeah, it was definitely a Wirecast thing, but when Wirecast goes awry, it goes awry because there's a bunch of things that are happening. Like I said, the feed from our live feeds from our guests, they come in through Skype. We use Skype. We're back on Skype after all these years after moving over to Zoom. It's because Skype came out with a very special thing. They did a partnership with, or licensing with NDI, which is New Tech Technologies, which allows an actual broadcast level feed to come in through Skype and then pipe right in to switchers like Wirecast. So I don't need to do screen caps and stuff of the video and everything else because there's a bunch of issues with that. It just pipes right in. But it travels in through the network. And so if there's something else going on, if Wirecast gets a little finicky, which it can, and I think too as well, I used the same project that I used for Mark Anton's live stream a couple of weeks back, instead of rebuilding it all from scratch. And I think it gets some, it's just, you've got to put, but it's not really Wirecast's fault. It's just with this kind of stuff, You kind of have to follow a process and get it just ingrained in you and then follow it every time. So I should have built a brand new project, or at least have a template project with all the show assets in it, but not touched with any of, episode specific stuff, or also have connections to Skypes that no longer exist and all that kind of stuff, because, all that stuff is an issue. And I should also dump preferences every time before I actually build a show. So these are just some of the things. I got to tell you, our friends like Bill Tarling and all the other guys that do these live shows, Dimmy and everything else, they really know what they're doing, and it's not as easy as just making it happen. So big props to them. I've said that before, and Bill gave me a lot of help when we were setting this whole system up. It's one thing to produce consistently good broadcast quality television, not live, but then add the live component to it. Boy, it just knocks it right to heck. So, all right, so this is bits and pieces. A couple of things. So again, Dr. Siegel's interview will be released in a few hours. So pretty much expected in your email box tomorrow morning. If you aren't yet signed up for RegWatch's emails, I would really like to encourage you to do that. Just go to regulatorwatch.com. It's easy to find, and if you haven't been harassed, it'll harass you to sign up. There's only a couple of hundred people have signed up for that email in the 4 years that we've been broadcasting vaping coverage. 4 years. In fact, we hit our 200th episode 3 episodes ago. So no hoopla was made at all. In fact, actually, I think it was Mark Anton's live stream was our 200th episode of RegWatch, and vast majority of those have been on vaping. I would say about 160. And the quality of what we've done, that's 160 episodes on vaping with that level. So obviously a huge thanks to everybody that has supported and then of course watched. I noticed that Shay is on the live stream. If it wasn't for her and her wonderful temperament, we wouldn't be here. I thank you so much. And Daniel, her better half, I don't know how that works in this particular case, but a lot of people in the Canadian vaping industry have really come to bat. If it wasn't for the Canadian vaping industry, well, RegWatch wouldn't be doing what we're doing, or even half as far along as we are in terms of wanting to make a difference with our content. So, I mean, if it wasn't for the Canadian vaping industry, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I threw out the sheet, so you're going to have to bear with me here as I find it. It's sitting somewhere behind me on the floor in post-stream debacle angst. Now, I wanted to do this when there was a whole bunch of people on the live stream, so I will do this again later in another episode. Oh, this is the craziness. All right. So there are a few Canadian companies that I'd like to specifically thank right now for their support. Now, obviously, there's been a ton, and I had this really close. But our Public Health England coverage is obviously very sensitive coverage. And so no brands or anything. Then, of course, Canada, we can't do that. I'm not certain how much we can't do that, but it's just better to be safe than sorry, because we probably could get away with some sort of brand ID at some point. We still may try. But the folks at La Vape Shop, Flavor Crafters, Sovereign E-Juice, River City Vapes, 416 Vapes, and North Island Vapors, they all really came to bat for us for Public Health England. And then our whole coverage this year that's been driven by Canadian companies, they all deserve, a really big shout out. And a lot of them were, involved that I just read, but Stinky Canuck, Dash Vapes, I can't do the proper la voix. Someone's going to kill me here. Johnny Exodus and his team. E-Sig Flavorium, T-Dog Labs, Divine, Vape Meat, of course, Flavor Art, DIY Flavors, FOV Labs, Wild Predator Vapor, Pacific Smoke, Digital Vapor, North Island Vapors again, and Dragon Vapes, and the whole crew at Dragon, a bunch of the different people a part of the Dragon Vapes chain, all of those guys. Oh, and Pacific Smoke came through too as well for us earlier in the year during our epidemic coverage. So again, there's just no way that our coverage can happen without the support from the industry. And we don't get on the air and do a bunch of, crying and begging for money. It's just, for one, it would diminish the content and the message, I guess. So we try to basically not do that. So everybody here has been fantastic helping us behind the scenes. And, we still need the help, obviously, because this has been trying, and it's been trying for everybody, obviously. So, but if you get a chance, we'd really, 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 really love it if you could. Whoa! Wrong button. If you can, we do have our new support website up, and it's in typical Brent Stafford style. Way too much information, way too many things going on, and not effective at all in fundraising. But you can go see it. It is at support.regulatorwatch.com. And yeah, it is definitely, it's a hunter skinner issue, I got to tell you. That's just as simple as that. When you're hunting, you're not skinning, and when you're skinning, you're not hunting. And hunting, I know how to hunt, but it's just so much more difficult around this kind of a content. Let me just see here. I just made a change to it. So this is the actual support site. And again, there I am screaming at you when I should just be asking for money. But, not everybody, is familiar with everything that we do. But now the site in this change was just made today. Now, so if you go, no matter where you are in the world, you're going to get one of 4 different regions that'll show up. So I'm in Canada, obviously, so this is the Canadian region. So then the Canadian form, so you can do one time or monthly. So this is new too as well. So you can pick, what you want or decide what you could give, and then fill out your information here. I'd really like to have your mobile phone number, because you never know, even if you're just a viewer, the chances are that I might pick up a phone and call you and say, hey, I'd love to maybe talk to you if I've seen some of your activity on Facebook or something like that. That's totally doable. We are always lacking from a need to get more people on the show. And certainly once all the bugs are worked out of this live stream stuff, I'm going to definitely want to get more just straight up viewers on. I could not tell you how much I'd like to get some fresh, raw comments from some of you folks out there that are viewers, because I know that you're going to be less than polite. So yeah, so the form's right here, and you can fill it out. And if you've got a favorite Facebook group, please toss that there too as well, because then I know which Facebook groups got more people that are engaged with helping us out. And then we can start tailoring some of our coverage. I'll reach out to the group in different ways, and pull out some information in terms of what may be some issues that are really important for you guys, or very local too as well. And if you are supporting and it can be identified towards that group, well, we can do something special, some special live streams that are tailored just for you guys, that are running just on your feed, or featuring some of your admins and stuff like that. So no problem. Let's find some ways to do that. And I think that also goes as well too for anybody that is, on the business side of things. So if you have a Facebook group that has a lot of members, and your business Facebook group, Well, we could easily do like a live stream to your 10,000, group members or 2,000 group members or whatever, talking about issues important to the group, interviewing people from the group, having them on the show, and that can be fully branded. Even in Canada, that for sure, 100% can be fully branded because it's not going out to the wide public. So we can do a whole, like, so if it's a contained group, even if it's a contained group of 50,000 people, we can still have that branding. Probably be good if RegWatch had its own group, and then we could broadcast to it, in a private broadcast. But obviously, we're not building that. We're not working on building that kind of an audience. So if you've already got a group and you happen to be a business, I mean, we can do branding and stuff like that. So anyhow, so this is the rest of the page. It's pretty cool. I worked hard on it. Took 2 months. The key thing is that this is all tied in with Stripe. There is no middleman. And thank God I did that. I didn't want Patreon getting all their knickers in a knot and then, kicking us off like they've done in the past. And you might think, well, maybe it's just, vaping and e-cigarette content. Why would you be so concerned about that? It's not like you're doing anti-social justice stuff and everything, which we would like to do, but, Facebook. But, it's not like you're doing that. Well, no, we're not. We're just making content that's about vaping and e-cigarettes. And then 4 weeks later, you see the whole thing blow up. So the last thing, I mean, seriously. So the great thing about this is that those who sign up, RegWatch owns that relationship. So I've only got to worry about Stripe, nobody else in between. And so it's fantastic. So that's about it. So if you're from the States, you're going to get the US form. If you're in the UK, you're going to get the UK form, and all obviously US dollars, British pounds. If you're in Europe, you'll get European. So that's that. So there you go. But again, thanks Canadian companies. The Siegel video will be out. And let me check my audio is still working fine. Thank you. So yeah, this thing is 2:20. It's going to be done. So in 2 hours and 20 minutes. So guys, like I said, this is bits and pieces, and I think it's. I wanted to just do some reading, and this is all unstructured and unplanned. So let's start with see what's here on the Nazi war on cancer. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's stay business orientated here for a minute. Not when I mean business, let me give you an update on Health Canada. So we reached out to Health Canada last night, pinged them with a pretty decent email requesting an interview again with Director General James Van Loon, and pointing out to Health Canada that there's quite a bit of coverage out there that seems to be in contradiction to the little bit more measured response to the lung illness that Health Canada has. I mean, Global was like, Health Canada issues dire warnings over vaping and lung issues. I mean, they're coming for me. That, my friends, is downtown Eastside Vancouver. We're right downtown. Our studios are 1 block away block and a half away from the waterfront station. Downtown, right on Granville Street. Granville and Pender, between Pender and Hastings. Come look for me, with pitchforks. So Health Canada, I fired off a request for an interview with them, and their senior communications person, which I probably won't do names, got back, gave me a phone call this morning, actually. So that's a pretty decent turnaround. It was about a 4-hour turnaround from their business day. And let me just pull this up. Again, bear with me. Checking my audio. Checking the... Better late than never. Okay, so YouTube. Chola. Yay. Well, thank you very much, Chola. Better late than never. but I'm happy to have caught this live. Thanks, Mr. Stafford, for your untiring efforts on behalf of every vapor. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I only report. I try to do my best. So, and I'm just checking here on Facebook. And okay, random question from Ryan Green. I'm glad I did just look. Have you ever thought of trying to have like a round table town hall meeting kind of episode with us industry members and the anti-vaping contingent? It's a good one. Yeah, not a specific with putting the vaping industry, say, together with the anti-vaping pressure groups. That's a good idea. The idea that we had explored, we've explored this now twice. Not in the last. It would have been 2018 spring, and again in 2017 around the same time. The concept would have been to do a kind of a mini town hall, much like you see with, say, like a 60 Minutes kind of thing, where you see, a bunch of people on, chairs, and then a bunch of people behind on chairs, or a half semicircle kind of thing, kind of one group on one side, one group on the other. Not huge, like a full town hall, but definitely, a structured television orientated thing where, yeah, it'd be kind of bringing them together. But it wasn't those two groups. It was really about bringing parents on that were skeptical of vaping and so forth. And then some parents on that were more inclined to see the common sense aspect of vaping. And then bring on public health people, and those would be kind of on both sides too as well. So not really have industry involved, though I think that's really good. It was definitely what we were looking at trying to do, is get the parents, the educators, the high school principal, that kind of thing, to where they would be meeting with, say, like the David Sweeners or the Dr. Tyndall, and so forth. So that was the idea. Again, it was fundraising. They take a lot to have put that together, but it's something still doable. I mean, I think it's needed now more than ever. So not certain about whether or not if it's right if it's industry, but definitely it's right if it's public health people that are on side of vaping, for sure, with educators and parents, and we definitely do not want to talk to any young people because, you want to talk to a teen about vaping. I mean, you're not going to get anywhere near an answer at all. You can't trust any of those answers. It's difficult. I mean, we can see how poisoned the entire sphere is, and it's been poisoned for years. Now you can't even say it's toxic. It's radioactive. I don't know. It's brutal. It's brutal out there. So any other questions, please do let me know. Let me just, and it looks like our audio is good still. So, and that's good. That's good. All right. Oh, I'm showing you now my, all right. This is the Health Canada file. So the Minister of Health and Health Canada both sent letters to the vaping industry and retailers over the summer. I asked for them to send us all of their most recent releases and pull quotes that they may have provided to the media. So, it's interesting. They are walking their fine line, and they've got their straight up thing, their programs that they're doing. The department is funding is issuing micro grant funding for youth vaping prevention projects. So I haven't even seen this yet. Interesting. So yeah, so this we're preparing for our live stream today. So I haven't had a chance to go through this. So what's going to happen here is that very soon, let me just make sure I've seen this. Right. So here's what the conversation is with Health Canada. Their person who does all of their science, public communications work is on vacation this week. So they don't have anybody that they're comfortable actually speaking specifically on the lung issue with us. And the Director General is in Europe this week. So he gets back next week. So we're talking, Mary Say is the senior communications person for Health Canada. She's the one that set up our original interview with Susie McDonald, who's the Director General at the time 2 years ago. And so, I mean, she personally phoned and said that she's going to do what she can starting next week to try to get Director General Van Loon back on the show ASAP to talk about this issue. And more importantly for Health Canada, what she had communicated was that they want to talk about the new regs. So that'll be interesting. So we'll see if that happens. So the good news, at least, is that they're not tucking their tail between their legs, and they are definitely, more than considering coming back on Reg Watch, which is good news. Yeah, so which is very good news. And all right, folks, so let's see here. Before we're past my little test point here, so let's just see what I can find in here that's worth reading. I was trying to decide whether or not if this needed to have a little bit of a what kind of a see, it's going to take some. See, the thing is that the National Socialist Party, under Mr. H, was the most rabid public health government ever to exist, ever. They pretty much pioneered, so much of public health. They were very, you probably already know this, they're like hell back on wind power, green energy. They're vegans. They launched a war on tobacco, as you know. They launched a war on cancer. Most of all of the major, like up until I think the 70s, most of the major advances in medicine when it came to fighting cancer were from, Hitler's era. And then, of course, a lot of the research had to get kind of redone after in order to get a proper, pedigree to it. So it wasn't, just accepted as German science. So, but it was still basically German science. And it wasn't until much later after that, real advances started happening that were outside of really the foundation that the scientists in Germany at the time during the 20s and 30s had done. The other thing too as well is that like so many of the tactics of the anti-tobacco groups and how they fight were pioneered by Hitler's anti-tobacco battle. And see, now the interesting thing is that this isn't coming from me. This is actually coming from medical historians. So the story of cancer research and policy under the Nazis has tended to elude the attention of historians for various reasons. The most important being, perhaps, that it may not seem to be in anyone's interest to dredge up some things. The subject appears to fall into an ideological gap, as with indoor domestic radon prior to the 1980s. There are not strong predilections driving attention to the topic. Historical memory is selective in any event, and we seem to prefer to focus on the barbarism of the era, a move that allows us to neatly cordon off sanctimonious us from a fallen them. The episode is intriguing, however, for the light it sheds on the experience of science and public health under the extreme conditions of a health-conscious dictatorship. The story is not simply one of the suppression of science or its unwilling conformity to political chicanery. Public health initiatives were launched in the name of National Socialism. Nazi ideals informed the practice and popularization of science, guiding it, moving it, and reorientating it in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. The Nazi war on cancer shows that what many of us would consider good science can be pursued in the name of anti-democratic ideals. Public health initiatives were pursued not just in spite of fascism, but also in consequence of fascism. It is therefore not enough to speak simply of the suppression or even the survival of science. One has to see how dictatorial ideals work to inspire and guide the science of the time. So this is page 249. It's towards the end here. Now, this is Robert Proctor, The Nazi War on Cancer. Now, Robert Proctor is the professor of history of science at Pennsylvania State University. He's the author of The Cancer Wars, How Politics Shape What We Know and What We Don't Know About Cancer, Racial Hygiene, Medicine Under the Nazis and Value-Free Science, Purity and Power in Modern Knowledge, and I'm sure a lot more since this book was published, which was published in 1999. And so when this work came out, this research came out, there was quite a few people actually that naturally grabbed onto it and used it to kind of try to attack the anti-tobacco movement, tobacco control movement, as you can surely imagine. And so Robert Proctor, I mean, this is real history. He's fully embedded in the whole movement. And so he's co-authored papers with Dr. Stanton Glantz on a bunch of issues around the history of tobacco control, and specifically together attacking those who want to frame today's public health movement as one as being fascist. So, and we're talking journal papers here, major journal papers. So what I'm reading here is fact, and it's established history by the very people that operate at the highest echelons of tobacco control. And maybe we'll read the inside jacket here for you. Again, this is The Nazi War on Cancer. Collaboration in the Holocaust, murderous and torturous medical experiments, the euthanasia of hundreds of thousands of people with mental or physical disabilities, widespread sterilization of the unfit. Nazi doctors committed these and countless other atrocities as part of Hitler's warped quest to create a German master race. Robert Proctor recently made the explosive discovery, however, that Nazi Germany was also decades ahead of other countries in promoting health reforms that we today regard as progressive and socially responsible. Most startling, Nazi scientists were the first to definitively link lung cancer and cigarette smoking. Wow. So, you hear all the time about how it was just only recently that this link was made, and for all of these years up until just like even the 90s, the tobacco companies were lying and fooling everybody and everything else. No. I mean, the British came out in 1956 with their first report that linked it, and then it was after that the U.S. U.S. Surgeon General did, which I believe is 61 or 64. So, and then the Nazis did back in the 30s. They were the first. Proctor explores the controversial and troubling questions that such findings raise. Were the Nazis more complex morally than we thought? Can good science come from an evil regime? What might this reveal about health activism in our own society? Proctor argues that we must view Hitler's Germany with more subtly, I can't say that word. Subtly, there it is. Proctor argues that we must view Hitler's Germany more subtly than we have in the past, but he also concludes that the Nazis' forward-looking health activism ultimately came from the same twisted root as their medical crimes, the ideal of sanitary racial utopia reserved exclusively for pure and healthy Germans. Author of an earlier groundbreaking work on Nazi medical horrors, Proctor began this book after discovering documents showing that the Nazis conducted the most aggressive anti-smoking campaign in modern history. Further research revealed that Hitler's government passed a wide range of public health measures, including restrictions on asbestos, radiation, pesticides, and food dyes. Nazi health officials introduced strict occupational health and safety standards and promoted such foods as whole grain bread and soybeans. These policies went hand in hand with health propaganda that, for example, idealized the Führer's body and his non-smoking vegetarian lifestyle. Proctor shows that cancer also became an important social metaphor as the Nazis portrayed Jews and other enemies of the Volk as tumors that must be eliminated from the German body politic. This is a disturbing and profoundly important book. It is only by appreciating the connections between the normal and the monstrous aspects of Nazi science and policy, Proctor reveals that we can fully understand not just the horror of fascism, but also its deep and seductive appeal even to the otherwise right-thinking Germans. And not right-thinking as left-right, right-thinking as thinking right. So the science question under fascism. Most people, when they think about Nazi medicine, think about the crimes for which the period is notorious. Nazi doctors sterilized some 350,000 Germans, murdered 200,000 mentally or physically handicapped people, and killed at least 1,000 concentration camp inmates in the course of medical experiments designed to advance the cause of German military medicine. Nazi doctors collaborated in the exploitation of slave labor and in the wholesale extermination of European Jews and Gypsies. Nazi medical horrors are familiar, but it is also important that we recognize the political diversity and tensions of the era. We are accustomed to thinking of Nazi political culture as totalitarian, but historians have also begun to appreciate the polycratic nature of Nazi governance. There were competing factions with different agendas, and the policies undertaken were generally the result of struggles among different groups: the SS, the Interior Ministry, the powerful offices of Goebbels and Göring, not to mention Hitler's own predilections. In science and medicine, too, it is wrong to speak of a coherent Nazi cancer research or policy. Rudolf Hess and his fellow romantics pushed for organic food and spiritual union, and others, champions of orthodoxy, pushed for belt-tightening and technical fitness. Hitler eschewed meat, though some Nazi philosophers boosted pork as a sine qua non of Nordic life. Anti-tobacco activists had to fight against industry apologists, of course, but also against the medical myopia that either disregarded statistics or focused exclusively on curing cancer rather than preventing it. Jesus. Anti-tobacco advocates had to fight against industry apologists, of course, but also against the medical myopia that either disregarded statistics or focused exclusively on curing cancer rather than preventing it. Disregarding statistics, eh? Racial hygienists were notoriously afraid of genetic damage, championing stringent rules to protect healthy Germans against exposure to radiation and to prevent the carriers of damaged genes from reproducing. Nazi fears of radiation, however, were more than matched by the equally Nazi push to root out illnesses, and sometimes individuals, perceived as threats to public health. The people doing the exposing were not the same as those issuing the warnings, though the interesting difference is not between Nazis and anti-Nazis, but rather between different kinds of Nazis, with different sorts of training and different conceptions of health. Nazi ideology was not obviously relevant to many of these machinations. Radium research and therapy had inertia that cannot be understood as a response of scientific actors to external political authority. There were ideologies other than Nazism suffusing the practice of medicine at the height of Nazi power. What these examples suggest is that there was no single community of science or medicine under the supposedly totalitarian conditions of Hitler's fascism, even after the exclusion of the Jews and the banishment of communists. What they also show, though, is that relations between science and society are more complex than is commonly imagined. Even in the microcosm of Nazi cancer research, we find very different ways that science can express politics, and vice versa. Scientists were boosting fascism, while fascists were boosting science. Fascists were arguing over what kinds of science should be supported, and scientists were arguing over what kinds of fascism should be supported. The boundary between science and politics was not and could never be a fast or formal one. The author writes, I should reassure the reader that I have no desire to efface the brute and simple facts, the complicity in crime, or the sinister subtleties of Nazi ideology. I am also aware that complexity and nuance are sometimes the historian's cheap shot, an easy retreat from clear line moral judgment. What I would maintain, however, is that we too often construct a scarecrow image of Nazi doctors, of monstrous and sadistic demons hell-bent on genocide and murderous experimentations. No, because obviously there was just some regular good old public health people in that group. There were, of course, such men, but there were also fertile, creative faces. There were, of course, such men, but there were also fertile, creative faces of fascism, as perverse as this may sound. So, all right. Yeah. There's a lot here. At some point, playing the Nazi card. Okay, so if there's anybody still listening here. All right, let's see here. This is fun. Let me just keep going. How can we explain the difference? So we're on still, we're toward the end. How can we explain the difference in the lung cancer mortality between German men and women? One could plausibly argue that German men were far more likely to be exposed to dangerous chemicals in the workplace, but such an argument cannot help us explain why American women's lung cancer rates have grown so much higher than German women's rates. There is, in fact, a better explanation. I would suggest that the most important factors behind the relatively slow rise, I would suggest that the most important factors behind the relatively slow rise of female lung cancer rates by comparison with male rates in Germany and female rates in the United States are 1. Nazi paternalism, which discouraged often with police force women from smoking. 2. Nazi militarism, which forced large numbers of males into a situation where smoking was not just tolerated, but de facto encouraged. So recall that the proportion of men smoking increased while the average cigarette consumption decreased. The Nazis failed to stop the growth of overall tobacco consumption, which culminated in 1942, but they did manage to channel most of that growth away from women to men. What did cut tobacco use, and dramatically, was the poverty and rationing of the war years and immediate post-war period. One can never know how many women's lives may have been saved by the campaign against tobacco and the 1945 collapse of the tobacco industry. Even so, it is still perhaps worth noting that far more women would have died of lung cancer had German rates continued to grow as rapidly as they did in the United States. American women's lung cancer rates increased more than a factor of 6 between 1952 and 1990. German women's rates, by contrast, only doubled. Had the German rate increased as rapidly as the American rate, about 20,000 more women would have died than actually did die. One could plausibly argue that whatever prevented German women from taking up the habit as rapidly as American women eventually prevented the lung cancer deaths of some 20,000 German women. So, playing the Nazi card. Nazism remains a powerful symbol and is hardly surprising that it has been exploited for a circus of philosophical and commercial ends. Nazism is the moral low point of many of the slippery slopes that bioethicists worry about. The dangerous potential end of everything from euthanasia to abusive experimentation. It is difficult to overstate the impact of Nazism on medical ethics, race relations, and much else as well. But I would also maintain that the implications of Nazi medicine are not as obvious as some would like us to believe. There is no immediate or unproblematic comparison, for example, between the Nazi extermination of the handicapped and current efforts to allow people to choose the manner and timing of their death through living wills, for example. Bioethical discussions are full of facile identifications of Nazism, with everything from abortion and rationalized medicine to doctor-assisted suicide. I would tend to agree with Michael Brelet, who's a very, very, very good historian, somebody that I read often. So, if you can think that I'm reading a historian, you can imagine that I've picked through, my pick of historians that, are writing with, say, a feminist lens, not the good feminist lens, the Marxist feminist lens, and so forth. Brelet is fantastic. So Proctor says, I would tend to agree with Michael Brelet that the Nazi analogy is pretty marginal to contemporary discussions about euthanasia. I would also agree with Arthur Caplan that comparisons involving Nazi medicine must be drawn with care, lest we mischaracterize contemporary policies or diminish the genuine extremity of the Nazi experience. Bioethicists are not the only ones eager to draw out lessons from the Holocaust, however. Pro-tobacco advocates have begun to play the Nazi card, with talk of neo-Nazis and tobacco fascism. In 1997, when anti-tobacco activists in Winthrop, Massachusetts, tried to ban all sale of tobacco within the city limits, an offended tobacco merchant suggested that the Board of Health was taking up where Hitler left off. A Toronto newspaper has accused anti-tobacco activists of being neo-Nazis and health fascists. The most stunningly offensive case I know of came in the summer of 1995, when Philip Morris of Europe ran ads in many European magazines seeking to identify smokers with ghettoized Jews and anti-smokers with Nazis. The ads showed a map of Amsterdam with an area near the traditional Jewish quarter cordoned off and labeled smoking section. The headline asked, where will they draw the line? Implying that society's efforts to restrict smoking are comparable to Nazi efforts to isolate Jews. We are likely to see more efforts to play the Nazi card as anti-tobacco campaigns move into higher gear. So as more tobacco control programs get going, Proctor expects to see more people that are victims of that kind of stuff to be claiming that the tobacco control programs are fascist. So, and that's exactly what Dr. Glantz was writing all about. Oh my God, just ripping the crap out of anybody who would even suggest that tobacco controllers are operating under any kind of similarity of kind of dictatorial and totalitarian and fascist control. Thanks for setting us straight on that, Dr. Glantz. So this is the ad. Where will they draw the line? I'll get a proper clean capture of that. It's definitely available online. I mean, every shot in here in this book has definitely been put online. And let's just see here. We're going to wrap this up. I don't even know if there's anyone watching left. I'll check in a sec. But I've got all of these journal articles and stuff in my research, and some of them are, really good ones to read. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother finding it. So that's the pieces. So Dr. Siegel was on. We had a burned live stream, but turned out in the end to be just fine. We got a 25-minute interview. He went straight to the hard stuff. We've got that. It's going to be released as soon as it's out of rendering. So you'll expect it in your email box tomorrow morning. If you get a chance, please do go to RegWatch and sign up for the email drop. So then, you'll get the official email every day, every time that comes out. And the great thing about our official emails is they're set up perfectly for you to forward them through to politicians, to media and stuff like that. It's just like all pro, and it's just all made for that. In my regular episodes, our style is not one for me to talk to the viewer like with stuff like this. Otherwise, years ago, I'd be making this kind of appeal a little bit different. But if you sign up for the email, you get the official email, and it's great for sending it along. So, which is like critical. And if you get a chance to obviously go to support.regulatorwatch.com and, consider signing up for monthly, $25, it'd be great. And you get a business receipt. Our system will send it to you. It's a write-off. And then, oh boy, I'm sorry about that one. And then we are also going to be starting a fundraiser with some help from our good friends at Flavor Art and hopefully with a few others for the Whole Truth program. Some of you know about this. This is a program that I built for the U.S. market. It was going to be 30-second television spots running on national cable in the U.S. And we even had spots in pre-approval with the networks. And then the industry got cold feet. We would have had this huge campaign on in February. I wonder how much of a help that would have been if this program had been up. So what we're doing is we're going to be launching The Whole Truth as a series of 6-7 minute videos that are going to be RegWatch produced, and they're going to be the definitive argument on key issues for vaping. So we'll tackle nicotine in 7 minutes, destroy it, right? Tackle teen vaping and the epidemic in 7 minutes and destroy it. So whereas our videos now, obviously with interviews, we have to give our guests time to speak, and they're coming on and they're specific to the events that are happening now, and you need background and all that kind of stuff. These are going to be, 80% narration driven. So I'll be narrating, doing it with all the graphics and craziness and stuff, but just to be driving home just the key points. So the content is definitive, and it's going to have a shelf life. So when we deal with vaping epidemic, it'll take it in, what's this whole thing about, and then take it all apart with the truth, prove the truth. It's the whole truth. And then that gets pushed out there. People can use it. It's not news. It's by us as a news organization, but it is, and with all of our brand and, imprimatur and all that kind of thing. But they're designed to be the definitive argument on these issues. And so there'll be 6 of them is what we're looking at to produce at first. It's going to be about 30,000 US, between a little more if we spend more on advertising, a lot, but it's good price. Pretty much it's how to get it done. And that's the Whole Truth campaign. There'll hopefully be a little bit more coming out on that soon. Thank you very much. Oh, and before I do take off, let me just see if there's any last things. Yes, The Whole Truth from Craig Majors. And a kind of bit confused. Brandon, yeah, sorry about that. I can just see. Can you explain your correlation you're making between the Nazi book and vaping? No. I can't do that at all because I'm not making any correlation. This is a book on the Nazi war on cancer. It's all about the public health movement and the public health war on tobacco. So, and written by top historian in tobacco control and so forth. So I'm not making anything about vaping and Nazis. Nope. And neither am I saying anybody in today's tobacco control movement are acting like Nazis at all. I'm not saying that either. People are welcome to form their own impressions of what's going on. So, yeah, so you said not trying to be rude, but what other point are you trying to get at? Brandon, I'm not trying to get at any point. I've just been meaning to read parts of this book. And I can pull up Stanton Glantz discussing this issue. So that's probably what I should have done in the first place. And okay, and Craig Majors have asked if I've spoken with Aaron Bieber. Yes, I have. He was on our show a couple times, and I speak to him every once in a while. We do two different kinds of things. So our stuff is news. He's doing documentary filmmaking, so really two different things. So there's not much crossover, but Aaron's great. I love his stuff. Oh, God, I love it. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing his, the nicotine piece. So, but, okay, so I guess, Brandon, the next time that I bring up the Nazi war on cancer connection, I will definitely start with Dr. Stanton Glantz and his writings that he was on disposing anybody of such connections. So, guys, thank you very much. And that is it. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And I am, if I can find the right button, I'm out of here. Thank you.